In this Power Apps demo, we will be looking at how to use the Power App to create a shift engineer or operator digital logbook. In a production floor or manufacturing unit, you would have a lot of engineers, operators, employees working on shift basis, and they would have to take notes on their shift time. The notes could be anything from calibration of a machine, update on the breakdowns, and so on and so forth. Typically, those are done using manual logbook. In some cases, they have digitalized, but we could use the power of Power Platform without writing much code and quickly build this business app to support that logbook related activities to be very digital, very informative, and accessible anytime offline as well. And as you can see on the right side, it's a sample of a manual logbook and how you could digitalize into a digital media form. I'm using Power Platform Canvas app for this demo with Power BI for real-time insights and Dataverse. This app would be used by engineer and operator to log his or her shift activities, and there is a form for supervisor or manager of that particular team to review that log, and also a dashboard to look at the reports of the engineer's logs and action items that's been taken during this shift. Now it's just one user who is going to use this app, which is myself. So I'll be having access to both operator logbook as well as supervisor logbook as well. In a real case, you would have supervisor access based on the roles, and the supervisor can access the updates from all the operators in their shift, but the operator cannot see the logs of the other users. So let's head into the demo. This is the app that was built. As you can see, there is three main forms or buttons for me to access the app and see what the app does. We will start with engineering logbook or operator logbook, and I would also play the role of a supervisor for approvals. And of course, we could take a look at the dashboard. So I'm logged in as an engineer, as you can see here at the top, and the system takes the standard system time. So you don't really have to worry about the date and time of the shift. You could take those inputs to save those modified, created, and those audit related details. Coming back to the main screen in the center here, I do have the workstation listed. Some of those workstations are sampling unit, distilling unit, production unit, packing unit, bottling unit, and so on and so forth. You could bring any other workstation related details. It could be a plant number one, two, three, a region, or area, or city, anything for that matter. You could bring that into Dataverse table and attach this particular form to that database. Or if you already have an existing legacy system where you have all these details, you could create this Power App and connect to that backend system. This is only for sample purpose. And now this is the sample log, if you will, from 5/1/2023. Now I have an option to see the logs from April 1st, for example, and it's going to list more logs that was created by myself. In a production scenario, it could be users from other other unit. And if I click on Shopfloor, as you can see, the log keeps changing based on the workstation that I select. There's quite a lot of logs here in the packing unit. And if I click on testing unit, there's only one in the assortment unit. Now you could go back to any number of days that you want to pull in those reports, and the system would automatically list those reports. Now what we could do here is let's log a sample report in here, and save them and see how that reflects in the system, in the dashboard, and also how it reflects in my supervisor's dashboard as well. What you see here on the right side is a production configuration. There are certain parameters that I gave as a sample based on my experience in manufacturing industry. Because you have the option to change this completely or add new things and delete new things, or delete the existing ones, sorry. And also a signature input. Now you could also add taking a photo or uploading a file based on the activities that's going on the ship, probably an accident, probably a breakup of device and stuff like that. But that's covered in detail in my another demo, which talks about field service technician app in length, because this is a logbook app. I don't want to bring that functionality, but you can already take a look at that functionality in my another demo. Since I have very small real estate, I just want to make sure everything goes in one page. But the options are endless, and I'm sure you could create those as well pretty easily, having a photo input as well as a file input. And what you see here at the bottom is my shift engineers, the likes of Joe Pesky, Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and Carol Shelby. And they have logged some of those logs in there, which would bubble up when I see that. So I know what's going on in certain workstation and what has been done on the system or the mission. So you could have that insights of your shift people. It could be any number of people. For demo purpose, I've just given half a dozen of those users. Now let's create a log and see how it all works together. So before I create a log, I need to choose, where I'm going to, have this log inserted or updated. If I'm in a bottling unit, I need to pick that, and then I can key in the updates. Let's say it's just a sample key in of those logs. The moment I key in that, as you can see, it's reflected right here, real time. And if I change that to shop floor, I wouldn't have an update. But if I click on bottling unit, you would see the update that I just saved. Now let's come here and then save some of those inputs. So typically in a factory or when you work on missionaries, you have to fill some of those mission configuration before you start your work, or you correct them during your work. It could be any use cases. We are trying to show you the options here. I would say the thermostat to be, let's say, 99, pressure gauge to be 8, coolant 10, and auto sensor 45. Now, as you can see, I'm not typing the rest of the field, RPM, feed rate, and the measurements. It picks up from the logic that's defined on top of this 5 fields. Now, you have an option to automate that by not allowing the engineer to key in these feeds, because these are all very critical for the engine to work. It's only a sample, but you have the option for them not to edit this. As you can see, when I click on this button, I can't edit it. But when I change the sensor value, you can see the other values keep changing as well. And finally, there's a signature text input. I would have probably brought this at the bottom here, but since I had very less real estate, I wanted to sneak that in here. And I could say, I could just put my name here and then click on save. So what happens is you get an alert saying mission configuration value successfully saved. Now you could trigger an alert workflow, send this to the shift operator or manager for approval in Teams and Outlook. And that use case has already been shown in many of my demo that you would see in the website. So I'm not bringing that in here. Now, the shift engineer part is over. I want to take a look at the supervisor view or the manager's dashboard. Now, in a real world, I wouldn't have an access to this dashboard. as an operator or an engineer. But since this is a demo and I assume both the roles and I have access to all of that that is here, and this is how the supervisor would have a look at the logs created by the operator in the shift. Now, if you see the middle, and this is the one that we just created as a shift operator, and supervisor can have a look at that as well. Now, supervisor can also take a look at all the logs created by all the users. For example, if you change this date, you would get more inputs for the month, and they can take a look. Now, since only one user is in the system, you would see all of those are against my name. But I made an attempt to integrate that with Azure Active Directory to showcase some of the other users inputs as well, where you wanted to see users from various other shift having that input. As you can see here, these are the users that we saw in the homepage: Carol Shelby, for example, Rick Dalton, Cliff Booth, and Kim Miles. And the supervisor can see those updates as well in his or her dashboard. And it gives that 360-degree view of managing the logbook digitally. Plus, the supervisor can drop down this value here at a workstation and go and pick the necessary one. If you find it, oh, there's so much record for me to read, they can distill it based on the workstation, which is necessary for them to take a look at that. Plus, the manager themselves can actually add a comment as well. For example, let's say, we'll just say logs are good, but it could be anything that they wanted to key in, and they would see the moment that is done, that would be logged in into the system as well as here. Now, it would be a different username, for example, but since this is one user doing this demo from end to end, you would see my name pretty much everywhere, but in real time, you would see there's someone else. It could be my supervisor or manager in the factory. So we kind of covered how to move from manual logging of the shift or operator activities to digital way. And there are some inputs that you could use to configure your production unit before you start the shift or before you start the work, and also add those logs into the system, and it's available for your supervisor to take a look, and they can make updates against those logs as well. And finally, there is a Power BI integration, and if I click on this Power BI, it's going to take me to a real-time dashboard where you could interact with the Power BI. If you have a dashboard of such nature, you could just integrate that, and the app user can take a look at these insights. As you can see, you could see the operator performance in terms of how they are performing, the number of production unit that's been active and been working on. Sampling unit has been slow, so you can make next best decision and actions based on that. You could also accumulate those logs that's coming from the operator. And this is useful because if you keep seeing this log where it says, oil pressure meter is failing in 10 different shifts in 10 different days or continuously, you probably want to take an action of replacing that, right? So this is very insightful if you wanted to do a proactive maintenance based on those logs. Again, I would refer you to my field technician Power App, where I've covered this scenario end to end using HoloLens remote assist, and which goes in depth. This is more of an L300 demo, keeping it pretty much light and within the scope of logbook management, right? And these are the mission names, and you could see how much of those number of missions that's being utilized on the shift. And if you see something that's not been in this insights or Power BI, you probably want to take some actions. And you could also see how much the engineers have been working on in the shift and who is contributing a lot. Some could be on leave, but you would see the trend as it grows. And if you have monthly and yearly data. Now let's go back to the homepage, and we would conclude this demo at this point of time. What we saw here today is how to digitalize a manual operator logbook, how a supervisor can have the bird's eye view of the team or the shift or the operators,